At 12:15 a.m. on September 26, 1983, a warning siren broke the silence inside a secret Soviet bunker south of Moscow. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was the duty officer watching OKO, an early warning satellite system built to detect an American nuclear strike before it reached the Soviet Union. Suddenly, a huge red message appeared on the screen: launch. According to the computer, one American intercontinental ballistic missile had risen from a base in Montana and was heading towards Soviet territory. Petrov had been trained for this nightmare. His report would move through the chain of command, where leaders might have only minutes to decide on retaliation. The system was telling him that the end of the world had begun. Yet Petrov looked at the warning and felt something was wrong. To understand the danger, you have to remember the world of 1983. The Cold War was at one of its bleakest points in decades. The Soviet Union feared that the United States might try to win a nuclear war with a surprise first strike, while the United States feared Soviet missiles aimed at Europe and North America. Both sides possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy cities, armies, and governments many times over. In this atmosphere, military planners built systems that rewarded speed. A warning had to travel from a screen to commanders before enemy warheads arrived. But speed creates its own danger. When a machine reports an attack, humans may have almost no time to ask whether the machine is mistaken. Petrov sat at the point where technology, fear, and nuclear doctrine met. The OKO system was supposed to give Soviet leaders an early view of missile launches from the United States. Its satellites watched for the intense infrared glow produced when a missile engine ignited. In theory, the system would see a launch before ground radar could confirm it, buying the Kremlin extra minutes. But it was new technology, and it had not been tested by a real nuclear crisis. Petrov understood this better than many people in the bunker because he had worked with the early warning program. He knew that a system could appear precise on a screen while still making mistakes in the real world. Still, the alert was not a vague suggestion. The display classified it as the highest level of danger. Officers around him expected procedure, not intuition. Then, the computer announced a second launch, then another. The screen eventually reported 5 American missiles heading toward the Soviet Union. The alarm filled the room with sound, and Petrov's superiors demanded an assessment. He had no reliable opportunity to wait for a full investigation. Ground radar could not yet see missiles that were supposedly still beyond the horizon, while the satellite data kept insisting the launch was real. Every second felt dangerous. Petrov later explained that he was not certain. He described the odds as close to 50-50, but he began asking a simple strategic question. If the United States truly intended to destroy the Soviet Union, would it begin with only 5 missiles? A genuine first strike, he believed, would be massive. Petrov made the decision that defined his life. Instead of reporting a confirmed nuclear attack, he told his commanders that the warning was a false alarm caused by a malfunction. That did not end the danger. If he was wrong, Soviet leaders could be receiving a reassuring report while actual warheads crossed the Arctic. The bunker waited for confirmation from ground radar. Minutes passed. No launch appeared. The reported missiles did not emerge above the horizon, and no impact followed. Slowly, the impossible truth became clear. There had been no American attack. 5 missiles had existed only inside the warning system. The Soviet Union had not launched retaliation, and the United States had not known how close a false signal had come to influencing nuclear decisions. The cause was almost absurd compared with the scale of the danger. Soviet satellites had seen sunlight reflected from high clouds and interpreted the pattern as the infrared signature of missile engines. A rare alignment of the sun, the clouds, the satellite orbit, and the viewing angle produced images that looked to the computer like launches from American missile fields. In other words, the warning system had confused light in the sky with nuclear fire on the ground. The design had been meant to reduce uncertainty by watching the horizon, but that same geometry made it vulnerable to a very specific optical illusion. Engineers later corrected the software and studied the weakness, but that offered little comfort to the man who had faced the alarm in real time. For years, Petrov's role was not widely known. The Soviet Union had little reason to publicize an incident that revealed flaws in its early warning technology, and the people involved were constrained by secrecy. Petrov was questioned after the event, and his report was examined closely. He did not receive a simple public reward for saving the world, partly because officials did not want to celebrate a failure in a system designed to protect the country. Later accounts sometimes turn him into a flawless lone hero, but the real story is more unsettling. Petrov was an officer inside a complicated chain of command, surrounded by other people, procedures, and machines. His choice did not solve the Cold War. It kept a flawed satellite report from becoming an unquestioned fact. This was not the only nuclear near-miss of the Cold War, but it was one of the most disturbing because no bomb, missile, or enemy commander had created it. The threat came from a system doing exactly what it had been built to do: search the sky for warning signs. Nuclear weapons created a world in which leaders feared being too late, so they built machines that could react faster than human beings. But machines do not understand context. They do not know whether 5 missiles make strategic sense, whether the sky has produced an unusual reflection, or whether an alarm matches the broader reality of a crisis. They process signals. Petrov's importance was not that he ignored technology completely. He compared the information with military logic and refused to let a single screen make an irreversible decision. The incident carries an uncomfortable lesson for the modern world. We often assume that more sensors, faster computers, and better automation automatically make us safer. They can, but they can also make mistakes arrive faster, look more convincing, and spread through systems before people have time to challenge them. In 1983, the warning was displayed as an emergency, backed by a military computer and a culture built around obedience. Petrov had every reason to fear that rejecting it could destroy his career, or worse. Yet he chose skepticism at the exact moment when skepticism was hardest. He did not know that he would be right. He only knew that the evidence was incomplete, and that the consequence of a false decision was beyond calculation. When you imagine the Cold War, you may picture missile silos, tanks at the border, leaders giving speeches, or maps covered with arrows. But one of its most important moments was almost silent. It happened in a bunker, in front of a screen, while an officer listened to alarms and waited for a radar confirmation that never came. There was no victory parade after it, no public announcement, no dramatic handshake between enemies. There was only a man who refused to treat an electronic warning as absolute truth. The world moved on without knowing what had happened, yet the lesson remains terrifyingly simple. Catastrophe does not always begin with evil intent. Sometimes it begins with a reflection on a cloud, a flawed system, a frightened chain of command, and a decision made before anyone has enough information